you've been working with coordinates almost entirely by themselves in the last 3 projects. In this project, we're going to let the computer do some thinking for us. So it's easy for the computer to figure out things like where the center of something is or the midpoint, and so we don't have to calculate all of those things ourselves. The computer will do this for us. So what we're trying to build is, I just call it a whirligig. It's over here on this the center of the screen here, and it's got some circles, it's got some lines, it's got some rectangles with rounded edges out here. So we're going to work with arcs and circles and lines, but the most important thing we're going to do is something called snaps. And snaps in the program allow us to take advantage of some of the things the computer can do for us. So you will need to open a new file, as we've done here, and then come down here to the status bar, and I just want you to check off a couple of things. Make sure your grid is still on in blue. Make sure this is on, your object snap. That's the one with the little red circle in the corner of the square. And you want to make sure that this dynamic input, the one that looks like it's got a plus sign, is off, so that should be gray. And to get started anyway, we're going to turn snap mode on. It looks like all the dots with some lines connecting it right there. So let me zoom out so you can see. Alright, so I'm going to walk you through the steps to make this, and you can see how some of the snaps will work. So first thing I need to show you is what different types of snaps are there. So I'm going to come back down to the status bar, and if you right-click if you have a mouse, or you can hold down the control key with one hand and click with the other on the object snap thing. That's the one with the circle, the red circle on the corner of the square. And then I'm going to take you, this whole thing comes up, and I'm going to take you to the menu that says Settings, just because it's the easiest way when you have to turn on and off several of these. So this screen is the settings for the object snap for 2D. We won't talk about 3D yet, okay? But anything that's checked off, we have endpoint, midpoint, center. Okay, we have a whole bunch of things checked off. You don't want to check off everything because it will make it very difficult to work around. But the things you need for this one are endpoint, which is the end of a line or an object, midpoint, center, because we're going to use the center of a circle. Midpoint will be the middle point in a line. Okay. Intersection could be checked off. It looks like an X on the screen. You can uncheck extension if that's on there. We're not going to be using that. Perpendicular, you want checked off. Perpendicular means a 90-degree angle to the other surface. And tangent, which means on the edge of a circle, the outer edge. So make sure all of those are checked off on your screen and none of the others are. Well, actually, we will also check off, well, we won't be using parallel, but parallel is here as well if you want to create lines that are parallel to each other. Okay? So we're going to click OK. Now, to get started with making this whirligig, we are going to make the outer box, okay? And to do that, I am going to do some coordinates with you with lines. So what we're going to do is make these 4 lines, and then we're going to use the arc tool that I'm going to show you to connect the edges so they're rounded like this. So turn on your line tool. Make sure you're in your drafting tool set. Turn on your line tool, and the first point for your line is going to be 5, 2.5. Let me go down here so you can see that. 5, 2.5. You're going to hit enter, and it should start our line out. Okay, and then the line is going to end on 5, 10. Enter. It should be a line straight up and down, just like that. Okay, and then I'm going to hit escape because I don't want these lines to connect yet. I'm going to connect them afterwards with arcs. So if you're going to reuse a tool and it's just the basic tool like a line or something like that, you can go back up and select line, or you can hit enter if it's the last tool that you used. So I'm going to hit enter, and you'll see the command line actually says line again. Okay, so I'm going to do the next line, which is going across the top. It's 6, 11 is the start point. I'm going to hit enter, and you can see that it started. And then 16.5, 11 is the next point where it stops, and then I'm going to hit escape. Okay, I'm going to hit enter for the line tool again. Okay, and this line starts at 17.5, 10. Enter. Good. And then the next one is 17.5, comma 2.5. Enter. Okay. And I'm going to hit escape because I need one more line on the bottom. And just to show you another thing you can do is sometimes if you start typing the command, just like typing the word line, so I'm going to start typing L, and it happens to be L is the shortcut for line, but I could type in L-I-N-E, enter, okay, and it's going to let me do the line tool. So 3 different ways to do the same thing. You can choose what works best for you. This line is going to start at 6, comma 1.5, enter, okay, we're going left to right, and we're going 16.5, comma 1.5 as the ending point, and it should look like this when you're all done. So let me zoom out so you can see, okay? So that makes, I'm going to zoom in a little bit using my zoom on the trackpad with 2 fingers or using the zoom tool, and you might need to use your hand pan tool to get it centered, okay? So I have made the lines for this drawing. Now I need to connect these with the arc tool. So I'm going to click and hold on the 3-point arc tool way up here. Okay, it's right beside the line tool. I'm going to click and hold on it. And there are lots of different ways to draw an arc. The one that we're going to use is called Start End Direction. Okay? And the one problem with this submenu of these things is that you can't use that enter trick I showed you before, because it will just do the basic 3-point arc. It won't do the start end direction. So we are going to have to do that each time. So start end direction. Now, if you line up on the end point of this top line, whoops, the end point of this top line right here, you will see a green square, and that lets you know that you're on the end point, and we'll even say end point if you leave it hovered there. I'm going to click there, and I'm going to move over to the upper right to connect it there. And then the third thing it's going to ask me to do is, as I move around the screen, it will let me bend the arc in different directions. Okay, I'm going to go over a couple of squares. So I'm 2 squares up and 2 squares to the left, and you get a nice rounded arc. I'm going to click, and that will round off that arc. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing around the other sides, remembering to click and hold on the arc tool and clicking on Start End Direction. Okay, I'm going to do this down first. So bottom one up and to the left, and down and over. Okay, make sure you get them nicely rounded. Do the same thing down here. Click, 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 using the endpoints to help us out. This is keeping me, the snap tools here are helping because it keeps me from having to remember what is this exact point and having to type that in. I could do that, but that would take a lot more time than I need to have. Okay, so now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to deal with this circle right here. Okay, the circle's white, so I'm just going to leave it white. Actually, but before we can place these circles, we need to know where all this other stuff is. So this circle happens to be about halfway. It is exactly halfway the center of that circle. But I'm going to draw some lines that we're later going to delete. Okay, so I'm going to click on the line tool, and I'm going to hover over the left vertical line, and you will see a triangle show up. Now, as you see, I'm jumping, my cursor's jumping to the grid, and that's because I have the grid snap on. I might want to turn that off, so that's down here on the status bar, and snap mode it's called, and I'm going to turn that off so that I can make sure that I'm getting the midpoint of this line. Okay, that triangle indicates the midpoint, and if you're not sure what that means, you can just click, you can just leave it there for a second, it will say midpoint. I'm going to click on, I'm actually going to start at the top, sorry. I'm going to click on the top midpoint and go straight down to the bottom midpoint and click. Okay. Now, I want to practice with some colors here, and we haven't done colors yet, so I'm going to, well, we have actually in our dimensions. So I'm going to click on this line, I'm going to go over to the Properties Inspector, I'm going to turn that line red, just so it makes it easier for you to follow where I am on the screen. I can say the red line here. Okay. I'm going to choose another line, and I'm going to start it from the midpoint on the left. I'm going to go to the center, okay, the midpoint of that red center line. Okay. And I'm going to make that line yellow over here in the Properties Inspector. Okay. And if this is going too fast, don't forget that in iTunes U, you can actually slow down a video by going to the bottom right of your screen and tapping, and you can change it from normal speed to half speed or whatever. If I'm going too slow, you can speed it up. Line tool again, going from the center of the screen, out to the right edge, okay? And I'm going to make this line green, and I'm going to hit escape. So now I have a nice little quadrant that I can work with. I want this circle right here, this left-hand side circle, to be at the center of the midpoint. The center of that circle is going to be at the midpoint of this yellow line. So if you click and hold on the circle tool, you will see you have lots of ways you can make a circle. We're going to choose, for the first circle, we're going to use center radius. Radius, if you may recall from math, is the distance between the center of the circle and the edge, or the circumference of the circle. So I'm going to click there. I'm going to hover over the midpoint of the yellow line. I'm going to click, and I could just move and click on the edge. But I'm actually going to type in down here on the command line. I'm going to zoom in so you can see. It says specify radius of circle or diameter. So it's set up for radius, and I'm going to type in 1.5 and hit enter, and I get this nice circle there. Okay. I'm going to leave that circle white. Okay, I'm going to put the second circle in, and this time I'm going to choose, hold down on the circle tool and choose center diameter. Now you can switch between the two if you happen to pick the wrong one. There's, down here you have some options, tan, radius, center point of the circle. So I'm gonna click the center point of the green line first, okay? And I can switch to radius if I want to. It says specify radius of circle or diameter, okay? So specify diameter of the circle is what it's set for. So I'm going to say, just to make sure it's set up for diameter, I'm going to type D, enter, for diameter. And that says specify diameter of the circle. The diameter is twice the radius because it's the distance across the whole circle. So if the radius of the other circle was 1.5, then the diameter for this one would be twice that, which would be 3. So I'm going to type in 3, enter. Okay? So you should have two circles exactly the same size, centered on those lines. Okay? So now, if you look at the drawing over here, what we're trying to make, these next lines are a little tricky to figure out, but what you need to know is if you were to continue this red line, it would hit the center of this circle, which I'm going to color blue so that we can follow this a little better. So let me go do that. Okay? And the same thing is true of the other line. It goes from the center of the other circle to the tangent, the edge of the circle. So this is going to be a red line, this is going to be a magenta line. Okay, so let's start with the magenta line first. Move this over. Okay, I'm going to grab the line tool, and there's several ways you could do this. Because we have so many snaps on, if you hover over the center of the circle, you're going to get the midpoint, but we know we put the midpoint on the center. Another way to do it is if you hover over the outside edge of the circle, you'll get a little plus sign inside a green circle. That's the center snap turning on for us. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to click there. And then I need the tangent. Now the tangent is going to show up if I hover over the edge. You see that? Hover over the edge of the blue circle, I get like a circle with a line over it. That's the tangent snap. Okay, so I can click there. I'm going to change that white line to, that's the bottom line, so that's magenta. I'm going to hit escape. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing on the top line. So I'm going to start out on the edge of the circle to get the center of the circle, and then I'm going to get to the tangent on the other one. Perfect. Okay. So now, before we do the white lines in the middle of our drawing, okay, and we're going to actually end up deleting out the extra lines that we used. Okay, so why don't I do that right now? I'm going to delete out that red line that goes up and down. I'm going to delete out the green line and the yellow line. Okay, so the problem is, if you look in this drawing, the lines, except for it's looking a little funky. Whoops. The lines are, it should look like solid lines. I don't know why it's looking a little bit broken. The lines don't continue to the center of the circle. They get cut off where the circle meets it. So that's called trimming. So we're going to do some trimming. Okay. There is a trim tool in the program. If you follow my mouse, in the tool palette, way down, there's like a triangle that has like a slice through it. If you go one underneath that, there's one called trim. Okay? And this is how the trim tool works. Select your trim tool. Okay? you will see down on the bottom on the command line it's asking us to select the objects we'd like to trim. Here's how I want you to be thinking about trimming. When you go to cut a string in real life, first you have to find the scissors. So think of it that the first thing you do when you trim is look for the thing that's going to act like the scissors. So I'm going to start by trimming out the magenta line, the bottom line. Okay? So the thing that's going to act like the scissors to cut off this magenta line is actually this white circle on the left. So I'm going to click the white circle. Then I'm going to say enter, because that's the thing that is my scissors. So I'm letting it know that's my scissors. Then I want to click on the part of the line I want to get rid of. So I want to get rid of the left-hand side, the part inside the circle. If I click, you should see that it goes away. So I'm going to hit escape to get out of the trim tool. Okay? I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, but first I'll change this line up here to red because I neglected to do that. I want it to look just like my drawing on the side. So I'm going to go to the trim tool again. I'm going to use the blue circle as my scissors. I'm going to hit enter. Then I'm going to get rid of the red line that's part on the inside of the circle. Okay, so now I'm going to hit escape. So it's starting to look more like my drawing over here. The problem is the circles actually stop in between those lines. So how are we going to do that? Well, that's a trim also. So this trim is going to be a little different, but I'm still going to use the same tool, the trim tool. I'm going to click trim, and let's trim out this white circle. So the thing that's going to act like the scissors now is it's going to be the red line and the magenta line. Okay, because those are the two spots where this circle is going to get cut off. So I need to hit both of those lines and then hit enter. Selected my scissors, and now the part I want to get rid of is the part between the two lines, the smaller arc here. So if I click there, it should do that for me. Okay, and I hit escape, do it one more time on the other side, hit the trim tool, red line, magenta line, hit enter, that's my scissors. And then the small blue part of the circle here in between those two lines is where I'm trimming. I can hit escape. Okay? So now we're almost done. The very last thing we need to do is put these two white lines in that are perpendicular, and they're actually coming, this one is coming from, let me zoom in here so you can see, okay? This white line is coming from the midpoint of this red line, and then it's hitting this magenta line where it is perpendicular, 90 degrees. So again, we could figure that all out mathematically, or we could let the program use the snap mode to help us, the OSnap tool to help us. So I'm going to turn on the line tool. I'm going to hover over the top red line. There you go. You see the midpoint has lit up. I'm going to click once, and then when I come down this way, you see that symbol? It's like it's a right angle. So it's a 90-degree line with a square in it, which is the symbol for right angle. Okay, and that means it's perpendicular. So I'm going to do the same thing going up from the magenta line up to the red line. And then I hit escape. And look at that. My drawing looks exactly the same as the Whirligig drawing. So there are lots of other snaps that you can use if you would like to. Don't forget to stamp your work by going to Annotation, clicking the A, and making a text box and typing in your name. There are other snaps that you can mess with by going down to that Object Snap tool and right-clicking and going to Settings. You can take some on and off. These are the most common ones we've dealt with. Okay. For the 4 in this project, you will need to design something of your own that uses a number of snaps.